It's a privilege to boycott is a phrase that should only be uttered by people who are on the poverty line or past it and in a food desert or something like that, and yet those aren't the people that I'm seeing using that phrase. If you're living off of like 20 bucks a week and you live in a food desert and the only option that you have is Walmart, fucking go for it. I don't think any of us are going to criticize you for doing that. And yet, all of the people that I see saying shit like, boycotting is a privilege, oh my god, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, stop coming at me for my Timu. Those aren't the people who are in those situations. At this point in my life, I have a lot of financial privilege. I have the privilege of being able to live with my family. And a lot of y'all that I'm seeing defending these points are in the exact same position as me. I could afford to go get Starbucks. I could afford to go get McDonald's. Guess what I do? I make my fucking coffee at home and I make my own food at home for the most part. But if I want to go to like fast food, I'll get fucking Whataburger. It's better anyways. You and me, we have options. We should not be fucking comparing ourselves to people who really do not have options. That's kind of fucking dumb, isn't it? This is exactly what check your privilege means, y'all. You living with your parents and paying like half bills and utility does not put you on the same spot as people who live in a food desert and are homeless. So, dude, people used to boycott the bus that would take them to work, the bus that would take them to school. People would boycott a necessity, and y'all can't even give up little frivolous luxuries that you have in your day-to-day life. Also, with Spotify Wrapped coming out, I was seeing everyone being like, oh my god, like, oh my god, all these people expect me to cancel my Spotify. Oh my god, you didn't cancel your Spotify. I did. I did because I can burn CDs and I can use other programs. It's not that fucking hard. You are not nearly as woke as you are if you're using buzz phrases to defend yourself when there are people doing so much worse than you who are doing so much better than you at the same time at this specific thing. Do better.
Hello everyone, my name is Noble and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about one strong idea. Boycotting is the only privilege for those who exist at the top of the power structure. This sentence sounds deep, but I will explain it in simple English. Boycotting means choosing not to buy, not to support, or not to participate. People often say if you don't like something, just boycott it. But from a left liberal perspective, this advice is not fair to everyone. Why? Because boycotting costs money and safety. People at the top of the power structure have choices. They have savings, they have stable jobs, they have many options. If they boycott a product, nothing bad happens to them. But for people at the bottom, it is difficult. A poor worker cannot boycott a product. A poor worker cannot boycott a cheap product if it is the only thing they can afford. A worker cannot boycott a company if that company is their only source of income. So when we say just boycott, we forgot about power and class. Boycotting works best when you already have privilege. It is easier for the rich than for the poor. It is easier for the rich than for the poor. That is why many left liberals say real change should not depend on a personal choice. It should come from fair laws, strong union, and systemic change.
I want to circle back to what I said about boycotting being a privilege because now the conversation is kind of becoming trendy. A lot of my neutrals are getting involved. There's people on both sides of the spectrum. And so I want to specifically talk about from my perspective. First and foremost, I think there's a problem on this app where people try to force themselves into boxes and force themselves into conversations, even when it's not applicable. The way this algorithm's set up makes it seem like everything on your For You page is catered to you and directed towards you, and that's not always the case. And I also think we need to hold space for multiple truths to exist. When I say boycotting is a privilege, that's not supposed to be in a singular lens. There's supposed to be nuance to it. Boycotting is a privilege, but not boycotting is also a privilege. You know what I mean? And I think this topic, people are kind of leading into like logical fallacies and changing the topic where they're talking about the Montgomery bus boycott, which is a whole different formula of boycott. And then people are talking about specifically Starbucks and Target, which are specific boycotts. And I think people are forgetting that disabled people exist, poor people exist, food deserts exist. And I think all of it is leading into a very classist and ableist rhetoric. I think we all need to do as much as we can when we can. And if you are doing mass consumerism and hauls and you're an influencer going to Target and drinking your Starbucks, that is privilege and that is problematic. But if you're a single mother with a disabled child and all you can afford is McDonald's, or you live in a food desert where Walmart is the only store around, or even Target's the only store around, I don't think you should be judged in the same lens as someone like me who has more options like Aldi's or something. And so I really just wanted to conclude in that way because I really think this conversation is getting away from people. And I think it's hard to have a 60-second video kind of like wrap up this whole discussion that would normally be like a 16 long week like class about boycotts and like the history of them and the importance of them. And we can't talk about transportation boycotts and talking about corporation boycotts and talk about like industry boycotts because they're all different. And that's where nuance is important. Accessibility is a conversation. Disability is a conversation. Poverty is a conversation. And all these conversations can't be in one single video in one single comment section. And liking a comment accidentally isn't the same as agreeing with like, you know, capitalism. So I just want to say that.
First of all, when we're talking about boycotting, we're not talking to John who lives in the middle of bumfuck nowhere and there may be one Walmart. Okay, we're not talking about Jasmine who lives paycheck to paycheck and literally that is the Walmart is the only store that's around them. Right? We're not specifically talking to those people. If you can boycott and you want to participate in boycotts, then boycott. There are other ways to be disruptive in this capitalistic system other than just boycotting, right? But more times than not, when you're talking about boycotting, you're talking about these mid to major cities, right? You're talking about where there's opportunities and things like that when it comes to these stores, because that's where most of the food's going anyway, right? Like that's where most of the opportunity is going anyway, is to these mid to major cities. That's why when people get on here and be like, well, everybody stop going to work. Everybody can't do that, especially if we're not organized. If you're not organized, you cannot just stop going to work. You have kids to feed. You have a family to feed. You have yourself to feed. If you're not organized, you can't ask people to do that, right? So normally when I hear the word boycotts, I'm mostly hear people talking about like mid to major cities. If you can do that and you feel like you can move to something else and get your items that way, then great, amazing. But if you cannot, what are you talking about? You should not be boycotting.
Sorry to be talking about boycotting again, and also on the same argument on is boycotting a privilege. Long story short, yes, but the phrase boycotting is only a privilege, or boycotting is a privilege, can only be used by those who are in poverty, or for those who see it as a privilege. Me personally, boycotting is not a privilege. I am privileged enough to where I don't need to not boycott. I'm well off, I'm middle class, I live in a lovely house, in a lovely neighbourhood. I can choose to boycott things because I want to. I can choose to boycott things because I can easily have other alternatives. I can choose to boycott things because I have enough money to go other places that some other people may not be able to do. That is why boycotting is a privilege. Those who are, for example, in poverty, they can't just choose to stop buying somewhere or not giving their money to a certain place because they just simply have enough money to go other places. They don't. If you're a middle class person and saying, boycotting's a privilege, that's why I can't do it, shut the fuck up. Because you can boycott. Saying boycotting is a privilege just because you don't want to go get your Starbucks or just because you don't want to stop eating from McDonald's is stupid. You're in a privileged enough position where you actually could boycott stuff. And boycotting does work. It's proven to work. It has worked throughout history. People who are in poverty and still will choose to boycott just because that is their choice. But that only makes it more difficult for you to boycott. So in some instances, it is a privilege to be able to boycott. But that doesn't mean those who are in poverty still can't boycott, because people still can boycott. It is just slightly more difficult for them. Yeah. Boycotting works. Boycott places. It's honestly not that difficult if you are like me, a middle-class white person. It's pretty easy to do. And I will continue to keep doing it. I will keep boycotting places. It's pretty easy.
So to conclude, boycotting can be powerful, but it's not equal for many people. It is not a real choice. It is luxury. From a left liberal view, we believe justice should not depend on how much power or how much money you have. Choices depend on power. Thank you for watching this video. Like, share and subscribe.